Harry Houdini, October the 29th, 1914, Flatbush, New York.
What you just heard was the real voice of Harry Houdini, one of the most famous and talented magicians who ever lived. People today still can't figure out how he did his tricks, illusions, and escapes. In fact, Houdini was so good, people can't even figure out how he died. Eric Weiss, otherwise known as Houdini, was originally born in Hungary in 1874 and became known worldwide for his escape acts, stunts, and illusions, and making an elephant disappear that one time. The 10,000-pound elephant named Jenny has never been seen since. Nah, just kidding. But since I can't find a video of Houdini doing this trick, here's a clip of the Broadway play The Magic Show doing it in 1981. Now, to understand why Houdini's death is weird and mysterious, it helps to know a little about the man himself. As you can imagine, these kind of tricks would have looked like witchcraft 100 years ago. So just imagine what people would have thought about Criss Angel. They would have burned him at the stake, along with all of his CGI artists. But since Houdini was the most popular act at the time, in September 1900, Houdini was ordered by the German police to perform for them because they suspected that his act was fake. So he then went to Berlin, where he was stripped naked and forced to perform an escape routine in front of 300 police officers. 1900s Germany was a different place. Houdini was then tightly restrained with thumb screws, finger locks, and 5 different hand and elbow irons. He was able to escape in under 6 minutes, and he later used the stunt in advertising. Then the next year in 1901, a newspaper in Cologne accused him of attempting to bribe a police officer in order to rig the escape attempt, and paying a civilian police employee to aid him with another performance. Houdini then sued the newspaper and the police officer who claimed this for slander. As part of the trial, Houdini was asked to open one of the police officer's handcrafted locks, which he was accused of bribing the cop for rigging, without any tools. Houdini was able to do so, and he won the case. Then in 1904, thousands of people came out to watch Houdini try and escape from specially made handcuffs commissioned by the London's Daily Mirror. This time, it took Houdini about an hour, but he did get out of them without any help. Soon after, in another stunt, he was buried alive and was only just able to escape in time before dying. It is said that when he came out from the dirt, he was in a state of near breakdown, but people still thought that these escapes were faked. Today, nobody would even give a shit, but back then, this was black magic to them. But since Houdini was the president of the Society of American Magicians, he was keen to uphold the professional standards and expose fraudulent artists. So this naturally led him on a personal crusade of exposing fake spiritualists, mediums, and psychics. So during the 1920s, Houdini joined a committee called the Scientific American, and they offered a cash prize to any medium who could successfully demonstrate supernatural abilities. However, no one would ever win this money. With Houdini's knowledge of magic and illusions, this allowed him to expose frauds who had successfully fooled many scientists and academics in the past, and he aimed to show how these mediums and psychics were taking advantage of the bereaved. Other magicians since Houdini have done this kind of thing as well, most notably the Amazing Randy, who also offered $1 million to anyone who could demonstrate supernatural powers. And even though over 1,000 people tried, no one would ever win this money either.
It's not going to turn for you?
No, it isn't.
Isn't that weird? Anyway, Houdini then started attending seances in disguise, accompanied by a reporter and a police officer, and would go on to bust all of them, hence his reputation of becoming the medium buster.
Buster, straight buster.
Then in 1922, Houdini's friend, Sherlock Holmes author and spiritualist advocate, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, invited Houdini and his wife Bess to join his family for a weekend vacation. While on the beach the following day, Sir Arthur told Houdini that Lady Doyle would like to give him a seance in which she would attempt to contact his mother. Harry is known to have been very close with his mother, and so this was very personal to him. It was also requested, though, that Bess did not attend the seance, as 2 people of the same mind might inhibit the spirits. That sounds totally reasonable. Lady Doyle's preferred method of spirit communication was automatic writing, in which she sat with a piece of paper and pencil and quickly transcribed the words of the spirit. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just a few bits here and there. You can find the whole article in my description. Quote, "Oh my darling, thank God, at last I'm through. I've tried oh so often, now I am happy. Why, of course I want to talk to my boy, my own beloved boy. Friends, thank you, with all of my heart for this. After a while, Sir Arthur interrupted and asked Houdini if he would like to ask his mother a question. Normally, Houdini would ask something only his mother would know, but he purposely evaded asking anything which might embarrass Lady Doyle, and instead he went with a question suggested by Sir Arthur. Quote, "Can my mother read my mind?" Lady Doyle then wrote, quote, "I always read my beloved son's mind, his dear mind. There is so much I want to say to him, but I am almost overwhelmed by this joy of talking to him once more. It is almost too much to get through. The joy of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you, friend, with all of my heart for what you have done for me this day. God bless you too, Sir Arthur, for what you are doing for us over here, who so need to get in touch with our beloved ones on the earth plane." Anyway, when Lady Doyle was finally done, Houdini thanked the Doyles for the seance, but he didn't say anything. He was keeping his true thoughts to himself, but the Doyles misinterpreted the silence as Houdini being greatly moved by this experience. However, Houdini would continue to debunk spiritualism, so Doyle wrote and asked how he could continue this campaign after he had been given proof of spirit communication by his own mother. So then on December 15th, 1922, Houdini wrote Sir Arthur back and said, quote, "I know you are honorable and sincere, and I think I owe you an explanation regarding the letter I received through the hands of Lady Doyle. I was heartily in accord and sympathy at that seance, but the letter was written entirely in English, and my sainted mother could not read, write, or speak the English language. I did not care to discuss it at the time because my emotions, in trying to sense the presence of my mother, if there was such a thing possible, kept me quiet until time passed and I could give it the proper deduction. I trust my clearing up the seance from my point of view is satisfactory, and that you do not harbor any ill feeling, because I hold both you and Lady Doyle in the highest esteem. I know you treat this as a religion, but personally, I cannot do so, for up to the present time and with all of my experiences, I have never seen or heard anything that could really convert me." End quote. Safe to say that this made their friendship kinda complicated, and made Houdini even more suspicious of mediums. So in 1924, when he heard the Scientific American Committee that he was a member of was about to actually award this prize money to a medium named Margery because his friend Sir Arthur Conan Doyle recommended her to the editors of Scientific American, Houdini was pissed. Sir Arthur said that he had witnessed her seance in his London home and was very impressed, but when she told him that she didn't charge for her services, Sir Arthur was convinced. And so too was the Scientific American Committee, and this group actually had some credible scientists in it as well. One guy named William McDougall was actually a psychologist from Harvard, and the other named Daniel Comstock was a former MIT physicist. But this group did have a few members that were actually advocates for the paranormal, like the mathematician and parapsychologist J. Malcolm Bird, and two members of the Society of Psychical Research, Hereward Carrington and Walter Price. Now, Malcolm Bird and Hereward Carrington had already examined Margery more than 20 times and were ready to hand over this money. But let's just be honest, it was in their best interest. If these guys are writing books about this kind of shit, having something confirm the existence of what they're talking about would almost certainly boost their credibility and book sales. As for what the physicist and psychologist thought, that is unclear. But we do know what Houdini thought. He thought this is bullshit. He was so pissed that he cancelled his shows and headed for Boston to expose Margery. Houdini, just by the way, never cancelled shows. Not cancelling shows is basically the reason that he died. Anyway, he was determined to expose this woman. Now, the medium they wanted to give the prize money to, this woman named Margery, otherwise known by her real name, Mina Crandon, was renowned for conjuring the voice of her dead brother Walter, whose spirit apparently shouted at people, tapped out messages, tipped over tables, and even blew trumpets. Apparently, Margery also had a way of making ectoplasm appear from her body. Like I said, 100 years ago, this kind of shit would have been witchcraft. So how did Houdini expose this woman, who the Scientific American Committee was so sure proved the existence of the supernatural? Well, Houdini first studied Margery's act before he went to witness it for himself, and he knew that Dr. Leroy Crandon, Margery's husband, a Harvard-educated surgeon and her greatest promoter, by the way, always sat on her right. Houdini also predicted correctly that he would be asked to sit on her left in the circle, with their hands joined and their feet and legs touching. So in preparation for the seance, Houdini wrapped a bandage very tightly under his right knee, and he kept it bandaged the whole day. It became so painful that it made his skin tender to even the slightest touch. When Houdini arrived at Margery's seance, aching leg and all, Margery greeted the group, took her seat, and she turned off the lights. You know, performing this kind of thing in the dark is the same as a magician taking a ring and putting a handkerchief on it and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna make this ring disappear." If you really had the power to do that, you wouldn't need to hide it behind a handkerchief. But anyway, Margery turned the lights off and, quote, "a ghostly whistling filled the room. On cue, the spirit of Walter whispered his arrival, even touching Houdini on the inside of his right leg," end quote. Pretty shocking, right? Houdini got touched on the leg closest to Margery. Yeah. Anyway, Walter then commanded an electric bell in a wooden box be moved to Houdini's feet. However, due to his bandage-wrapped sensitivity, he could feel Margery moving and stretching under the table to get the bell box. Later on, he felt Margery shift again, but this time to tip a 3-sided Chinese screen with her foot. Then, Walter levitated a megaphone and said, "Have Houdini tell me where to throw it." Houdini said, "Towards me," and the megaphone fell somewhere in front of Houdini. This is the part of the trick that could have won Margery the Fool Us trophy. However, Houdini was too good and eventually figured out that Margery had just placed the megaphone on her head in a brief moment when she had a free hand. She then jerked her head in his direction and sent the megaphone crashing to the floor. After the seance, Houdini said this, "I've got her, all fraud, every bit of it. One more sitting and I will be ready to expose everything." At a second seance then at a Boston hotel, Margery's act featured a levitating table. Houdini then reached out in the dark and found Margery's head lifting the table from beneath. Houdini said, quote, "the slickest ruse I ever detected." Apparently, he said it in a way that it appeared like he almost admired her creativity. But when he announced his findings to the Scientific American Committee, he was asked to hold off on a public denunciation, mostly because the committee was conflicted. But in February 1925, the committee decided not to award the prize money to Margery after they witnessed several additional seances. The spiritualists then got really pissed off about this, as did Walter the Spirit, and Walter allegedly said, quote, Margery allegedly said, quote, "Houdini, you goddamn son of a bitch, I put a curse on you now that will follow you every day for the rest of your short life," and then allegedly predicted that Houdini will be gone by Halloween. Now this pissed off Houdini even more, so much so that he not only made a pamphlet humiliating Margery, but he also started comedically performing Margery's seance in his acts as a way to prove that it's all fake, which his audiences loved. This then pissed off Margery's supporters even more, who started then threatening to attack Houdini and were all waiting in excitement for his impending death that Walter predicted. However, Houdini continued with his batshit crazy escape act, and each time he escaped totally fine. And then in 1926, Houdini died on the afternoon of Halloween. Well, that's weird. But as weird as it is, we must remember that Walter was off by 1 whole year, and also did not specifically say that Houdini will die on Halloween. But people still think it's kinda ironic and weird that a quote-unquote ghost predicted Houdini's death. To be fair, yeah, I suppose so. But the Simpsons also predict things all the time, and people don't even care anymore. We are no longer impressed. So not that anyone really cares anymore, but as far as an explanation for the Simpsons predictions, I liked No Dark Vision's reply on a Reddit thread called "Is it weird how the Simpsons predict the future?" Quote, "It's not exactly a prediction. There's no specific dates, time frame, and no specific actionable intel. So what you end up with is a bunch of what-if scenarios that may or may not happen eventually anyways. Predictions in general, not just Simpson ones, are usually done through post hoc rationalization to fit and make the prediction work. Also, people don't remember the predictions that didn't come true," end quote. That said though, Houdini did die of something very rare on Halloween. He died at age 52 from peritonitis, which is swelling of the abdomen, possibly related to appendicitis that he was unaware of, or possibly developing appendicitis after getting sucker punched in the stomach by a guy named Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead. Although extremely rare, acute appendicitis, which follows after direct abdominal trauma, has been observed before, unlike ghosts. But hey, since this condition is rare and Houdini was addicted to psychics and a psychic said that he'll be gone by Halloween and he died on Halloween, Wait a minute, doesn't that mean the prediction is wrong then? She said he'll be gone by Halloween, meaning before Halloween. Houdini died on Halloween, after it started. What the fuck are we even doing here? Walter technically could not have been more wrong. Well, anyway, we've come this far, so let's finish it off and give Houdini the respect he deserves. Now, a few days before he died, Houdini gave a lecture on October 19th, 1926, and some of the students requested a private meeting with Houdini, which he granted for October 22nd. That day, before his show, he was in his dressing room with the students that requested this meeting, and Houdini was chilling on a couch relaxing because he had just broken his ankle in a performance a few days earlier. And while he was talking to these 3 students from McGill University, this guy, Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead, came up to Houdini asking if he believed in the miracles of the Bible and whether it was true that punches in the stomach did not hurt him. Houdini only had the time to say his stomach could endure a lot before Whitehead started delivering, quote, some very hammer-like blows below the belt. This whole interaction was witnessed by the 2 other students that were in the dressing room as well, named Jacques Price and Sam Smilovitz. Jacques Price said, quote, Houdini winced at each blow and stopped Whitehead suddenly in the midst of a punch, gesturing that he had had enough. Price went on to say that Houdini had no opportunity to prepare himself against the blows, as he did not expect Whitehead to strike him so suddenly and forcefully. It's been thought that if Houdini's ankle had not been broken, he would have probably stood up from the couch and stood in a position to brace himself for the punches. Well, that evening throughout his performance, Houdini was suffering from the pain. He had insomnia and remained in constant pain for the next 2 days. However, he did not seek medical attention. But when he finally did go to a doctor, he was found to have a fever of 102 or 39 degrees Celsius. It was also noted that he was suffering from acute appendicitis and was advised to have immediate surgery. For some reason, Houdini ignored this advice and decided to go on and perform his scheduled shows. When Houdini arrived at the Garrick Theatre in Detroit, Michigan on October 24, 1926, for what would be his final performance of his life, he had a fever of 104 or 40 degrees Celsius. That's very bad. Despite this though, Houdini went out to perform. It is said that he passed out during this performance as well, and when he was revived, he continued with the performance. After the show, he was then taken to a hospital where he died 1 week later from peritonitis on Halloween. Man, if he had just gone to the doctor earlier. Now you might be wondering, what's the mystery here? Well, mostly the circumstances I mentioned earlier, that a ghost predicted his death by Halloween. But like I said, it's very rare that a punch can cause acute appendicitis. Not impossible, just very rare. So one theory, and probably the most likely, suggests that Houdini was unaware that he was suffering from appendicitis, and he might have taken the abdominal pain a little more seriously had he not coincidentally been sucker punched in the stomach by Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead. I personally doubt that. Houdini, like most of us males, refuse to go to the hospital, even when we're dying. Even though this seems to be the most likely explanation, it's not like Jocelyn Whitehead broke one of Houdini's ribs or something with those punches. Houdini couldn't have been under the impression that a punch from this student would have caused him that much pain. Plus, Houdini was extremely fit. This dude was ripped. He was in very good shape. So theory number 2 is, did Houdini just have a 1 in a million freak occurrence and get appendicitis from this punch from Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead? Well, Whitehead did actually speak out about the incident, and he claimed that he struck Houdini with permission and fair warning, and not very hard, on the opposite side of the body to the appendix. However, this account was strongly contradicted by the 2 other students in the room, neither of whom knew Whitehead, so neither of them had a reason to lie for him, and both of whom said they were shocked by his actions. Whitehead claimed though that the conversation turned to the question of keeping fit. Houdini said that he could duplicate a famous strongman's feat of supporting the pivot of a bridge while a car with at least 5 people drove over him. He claims that Houdini then suggested that Whitehead feel his abdomen. Oh no. This isn't some P. Diddy kind of shit, is it? Whitehead then said his muscles were like a washboard and his abdomen as unyielding as a sandbag. Fuck dude, this is making me uncomfortable. Quote, Houdini invited me to hit him. I struck him a second blow slightly harder than the first. He gave not the slightest indication of any discomfort at either of the blows. Both blows were struck to the left side of his body and above the navel. He then goes on to say that he actually had 3 more private meetings with Houdini after this incident, and that, quote, Houdini did not on any of these 3 occasions refer to the incident of my blows as having incommoded him in any respect, or caused him any harm. Not sure if that's been verified, that is just what Whitehead claimed, but Houdini was punched on the 22nd and went to hospital on the 24th. Either way though, Whitehead was never charged with any involvement with Houdini's death. But even still, after taking the statements from Jacques Price and Sam Smilovitz, Houdini's insurance company concluded that Houdini's death was due to this dressing room incident, and they were paid double indemnity, which is a clause in a life insurance or accident policy where the company agrees to pay the stated multiple, in this case double, if the death is caused by accidental means. So yeah, who knows? But hey, theory 3 is kinda funny at least. The book The Secret Life of Houdini suggests that he was killed by spiritualists. And I'm in no way supporting this theory, but I felt that this was a fitting time to mention that Margery's career kinda went out like a wet fart after Houdini exposed her. People just pretty much lost interest and trust in her. And this didn't only happen to her, Houdini debunked a lot of people. He also sued a lot of people for trying to copy his tricks. So Houdini wasn't adored by everyone. Now, there is no evidence to support that he was murdered, but I guess if he was, somehow, there would have been at least a motive. However, on March 22nd, 2007, Houdini's great-nephew, the grandson of his brother Theo, George Hardeen, announced that the courts would be asked to allow an exhumation of Houdini's body to investigate this murder claim. However, the family of Bess Houdini said no, fuck off, this is just a publicity ploy for this book The Secret Life of Houdini, and that press conference was not arranged by the family of Houdini, or even Houdini's great-nephew. It was actually arranged by the public relations firm Dan Cloris Communications, who were hired by the two authors of this book to promote it. Integrity is worth a lot less than a couple extra dollars. Now, even if it is true that a spiritualist murdered him, Harry Houdini is still the one who got the last laugh, even in death, because he and his wife Bess agreed that after one of them died, the other would still continue to attend seances in an attempt to communicate with the other. I guess in their mind this would prove once and for all if there was some sort of spiritual realm. So Houdini and Bess agreed on a secret code word, so that if either of them were contacted by a medium in death, they would be able to prove that it is them on the other side. Well, as Bess continued to attend these seances, not a single medium ever guessed the code word. At the end of the day though, while it is very weird, it does seem like if Houdini just got the medical attention he needed sooner, he may have had a longer life. So I guess the real mystery is why us men just don't want to go to the hospital.
Didn't call the doctor, did you?
Well, I thought we ought to be on the safe side.
I'm quite all right, Barbara. I ran it under a cold tap.